I'm sorry I veered off the road intentionally and almost killed you in that car accident. But all that matters is that you're okay now, alright? Yeah, I'd be even more okay if you hadn't have driven off the road. Welcome back to Star Trek Prodigy. This is episode 12. I always get confused with this because the first two episodes are combined into one. And apparently, my streaming platform of choice was confused as well. If this review is a little late, it's not my fault. Where I stream Prodigy thought erroneously that this episode was the previous episode. Normally I get these episodes first thing in the morning, but for whatever reason, when I clicked on this episode, listed on there as episode 11, because they consider 1 and 2 to be the same episode, it gave me the previous episode. So I watched the first, 5 minutes, maybe, of the episode before I realized I was watching Asylum. And sure enough, I went, okay, this is wrong. I went back, and this can't just be a holodeck fake-out, right? Showing a holodeck presentation of the first episode, or the episode that came previously. So that's not what's going on. I tried restarting it. I tried kicking it. I tried screaming at it. I tried hitting the power button on and off. Sure enough, nothing. I tried it on various devices. No dice. So my episode did not actually come till halfway through the day. And it really messed up my schedule. Did this happen to anybody else on any other streaming service? If it means anything to you, I'm watching this on Crave, Crave. Anyway, yeah, it really threw a wrench into the works. Interestingly enough, the episode proper, episode 12, Let Sleeping Borgs Lie, did start with a holodeck fake-out. What are the chances of that, right? I thought mistakenly that I was watching a holodeck recreation when I watched the wrong version of this episode, which was Asylum. And then when I watched the actual Let Sleeping Borgs Lie, it did indeed start with a holodeck fake-out. That's interesting. It's the first time this has ever happened for me. Has it happened to you? Well, that's for me to not know and for you to tell me, so then I do know and then can comment on it. I stand by my statement that this episode and the last one should have been combined. I think it would have came to a more rounded out whole. That being said, this episode does get to its conclusion better than the previous episode. Last episode felt like it was missing an ending or missing a middle. It didn't have the plot arc, right? This episode did. It's just that what I got, I didn't really like it. I will say, on repeat viewings, I liked it more. The more I watched it, it got a little better. I was thinking, wow, this is really bad. And now I'm back up to now, it's just alright. If you're tired of the Borg, this could be a skipper. Ultimately, it feels like what goes on here, plot-wise, is not super essential. That's not a bad thing. I like purely episodic shows where episodes don't relate to each other. I like that. But you may be able to get away with skipping this one. We meet a Borg cube, and we literally then end up exactly where we started. We're getting character development and not plot development, if you feel me. So with that out of the way, let's see what's actually going on and Let Sleeping Borgs Lie. If only we could let Sleeping Borgs lie, we wouldn't have all the problems we generated for ourselves in this episode. Our characters are confident with the protostar. Our Captain Dal, he's really transformed. It's a great character arc. Our characters are great. The performances are fantastic through and through. Nobody sounds off or wrong. I just wanted to get that out there. Normally I'd save that for the end, but it's really hitting home for me. Okay? We started off, like I said before, a holodeck recreation of what happened the end of episode 10 or something, right before the mid-season break. This show is fantastic at generating believable sequences that let us know that our characters are up to speed. This is the second of 3. Our first one was when we need to explain how it is that rok-tahk is good at math. Being a slave doesn't let you get very good at math unless you were enslaved when you were older. How do we explain rok-tahk as the science character? We engineer a plot where she is on the ship for like years and then everybody else isn't. It's a timey-wimey time displacement episode. It's a pretty good episode. Essentially, to sum it up, all of our characters experience a different amount of time. Go watch the episode. Go look at my review. I forget what it's called. Time Amok or something like that. It's one of those Amok titles that Star Trek is known for. Anyway, suffice to say, rok-tahk spends a lot more time on the ship than anybody else. Okay, so her real time on the ship is actually years, which is how she got to learn all this Starfleet math, training, what have you, blah, blah, etc., etc. Now rok-tahk is set up as a character in that way, so it's believable. This episode, we set up a holodeck recreation of the moments leading up to the first defeat of the Diviner, with Zero's, visage causing him to go crazy. So our characters are caught up. We now don't have that question, right? Similarly, in this episode, we have a scene where Janeway says, "I'll get you guys caught up to speed on everything I know about the Borg." And then we have a cut that implies a lot of time went by. This is good. It's removing the questions, keeping it simple. You don't need any more. There's your third one. This episode has constructed 3 scenes that get our characters up to speed without boring the audience. It's very good. It's respectful to the people who already know. But visually we get it across, so people who don't know can get up to speed in that way. Okay? So we're making this show is working for people who know Star Trek and people who don't. I really feel that. So it's succeeding in its stated goal, which is always a win. Our characters, after hearing this holodeck recreation, are up to speed on the fact that the protostar is a weapon. Okay? There is a virus, if you will, inside the protostar that infects any ship it comes into contact with. This is obviously for the purpose of destroying Starfleet. Very bad. We have to stop that. Our characters are physically looking for it. Now, you may have thought, if you were watching the same as I did, that it's in the computer. It's not really a physical thing you can find. But I was wrong. It actually is a physical thing you can find. And it's hidden in the ship. It's hidden in a subdeck underneath the bridge, directly where they were. The evil was hiding in the basement of the bridge. And interestingly, it has a lock that only Gwyn can open with their amorphous sword thing. And it goes into this slot that's painted onto the floor panel like a keyhole. It's very cool. High tech, interesting, and a bit mysterious. I really like that. Our characters were searching physically, and they were right. It was a physical object. I was wrong. Last episode, I believe they had a shot of the red glowing thing that represents this evil force. I thought that was like a physical representation of something that was not physical. That's how I interpreted that. But it actually was physical, so that's interesting. We find it, and it's like a mine. It's bonded to this ship. We can't get rid of it. Stupidly, Jankum tries to shoot at it. To no avail, it just defends itself. Okay? It is not immediately threatening to the crew, it seems, but it is threatening to any ship it comes in contact with. It's a parasite, right? It's not trying to kill its host. It wants its host to infect others. An interesting concept. and an interesting get out of jail free card for our writers, because it means our characters get this time to spend a lot more, to go on a lot more adventures with this ship. We have an excuse not to go back to Starfleet now. The first arc of the show was trying to get to Starfleet. Now we realize we can't do it. Let's go have some fun. And there was a moment in this episode where we were exploring the Borg cube that's about to show up, where I was thinking, man, this team is really working. Cool uniform, cool ship, cool adventures. Let's just keep going. Let's come up with excuse after excuse for why I can't go back to Starfleet. I don't care how stupid the excuse is. Let's just keep going. Bring on the crazy. This is pretty fun. Maybe you felt that as well. Because mostly what's going on minute to minute in the show is ace. If this could just be its own indefinite Star Trek show. Of course, the elephant in the room is that this show cannot go on indefinitely. Like you would not, we know a show has to end, but when a show comes up, you think that, oh, they're just going to keep this going forever. This one kind of has a built-in kill switch because our characters are kids. We know we can't keep the ship, and we know that when we go back to Starfleet, we're not going to be allowed to stay on the ship. So it's kind of like, it's bittersweet. I want it to go on, but I know it can't. Maybe it's for the better. But I think that one potential way that this could be brought into an indefinite show status, as in 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever seasons, maybe you could have a time skip. Have it so our characters do go to the academy. They do some soul searching. I mean, you don't want to go to Starfleet on any false pretense. You don't want to just make up your mind one day and go, which is what the perception I get from these characters. They're very young to make a decision like that. Any misgivings you have now could be tomorrow's fatal disaster. So I think it would be cool if we had a time skip. We show a montage of our characters soul searching. We age them up 5 years, all of them, and we put them through the academy, and they're back as ensigns, and the show is an ensemble cast taking place on like 3 different ships. Maybe that's how you can make Prodigy go forward. I wouldn't know how you would keep the Protostar involved, but maybe Chakotay gets it back, and Chakotay gets to lead an expedition of multiple ships back into the Delta Quadrant with the Protostar as the lead ship. Maybe other stars get proto-drives? I don't know. It's one angle. I'd watch that show. A sequel to Voyager, if you will. Our Borg cube, to get back on track, shows up and interrupts our musings about the nature of the parasitic device attached to the ship, which we are calling the living construct, according to the Borg themselves. How do we get rid of this thing? Well, maybe the Borg know. The Borg are good at disabling weapons. So we should just go on the Borg ship and figure out how to disable that part of our ship. Good idea? No. Janeway does not think that's a good idea. Okay? I happen to be in agreement. Historically speaking, it's always a bad idea to play around with the Borg. It's very hard to win with the Borg. However, we find out that this Borg cube is asleep. This has happened before. Borg cubes do go to sleep. And because of something that happened in Voyager, no excuses for Voyager, because anybody watching quote-unquote new Trek could very well go back and watch old Trek. So I'm not going to spoil Voyager. However, because of reasons, this Borg cube's drones are asleep, they're dormant, and they say that the nanoprobes are disabled. That's important. We cannot assimilate on contact like we used to be able to. It's important to understand that, and I didn't quite catch it at first, but then I got it, and then I realized why. We're going on to the Borg cube after having been briefed by Janeway. We need to find the vinculum, which is canon, and it's kind of like the Borg cube CPU, in a sense. We need to disable that in order to remove entirely the threat of the Borg cube so we can dismantle it and discover its secrets about how we can disable the living construct. We run from some Borg. We find some Borg. We're scared. Yada, yada, yada. It's old hat at this point. Are you still scared of the Borg? If you're bored with Borg, this might not be for you. But some people love the Borg, and anything with Borg on it, they're gonna like. If it's got Borg on it, say okay with me. If you're one of those guys, I don't know. I'm not really into that stuff. I'm not. I don't. I'm a little Borg bored, if you will. It's eventually concluded that in order to interface with the Borg cube, we need to have Zero get partially assimilated into the hive mind by standing inside one of the Borg recharging alcoves. But I don't know. They come to this decision very fast. It's worth noting that Zero seems totally compliant with the idea and in agreement. I was interested in what would happen when a non-corporeal psychic being attempted to enter the hive mind of the Borg cube. I was more interested in what would go on than what really did. It makes more sense on repeat viewings why it is that Zero would be more capable of disabling this cube. If you take Zero's nature as a Medusan, and maybe this would have a strange effect on the Borg cube. Someone such a powerful mental organism, if you can call Zero an organism, it's all up in the air, It's nebulous how this would work out. But I eventually accepted the conclusion. Our characters need to leave Zero. The Borg are coming. They're waking up. They've sensed a threat. Our characters, save for Gwyn, get captured by the Borg, and now it's up to Gwyn to patiently and without provocation walk through a field of Borg drones in order to get to where they are to save them. At the behest of Janeway, don't act like a threat. Seems strange to me. The Borg drones, who did perceive them as a threat, were just attacking our main characters. But now, later on, Gwyn is not a threat on site. Is the Borg's local communication system between drones disabled as well? I would think that in close proximity, they would be able to communicate that on their, like a little mini network. But I guess not. Gwyn is not perceived as a threat, but she just was a moment ago. It's a cool scene, but it wasn't worth it to me. Anyway, Gwyn finds our characters, and they're hilariously pinned up against walls in a James Bondian sequence where our characters are waiting patiently as a laser threatens to tear them apart. Very funny, very interesting, quaint, hokey, but for a kid, maybe this is scary. I don't know. I've seen it a million times. Our brave heroes need to escape from being pinned to a table as a saw blade or a laser or something threatens to go through their body. We've all seen that before. Very derivative. It gets the job done. You would think they would have something more advanced, but the Borg have been shown to do all kinds of... The Borg have been shown to have a flair for the dramatic when the episode needed it to work that way. I'll say that. So it's not exactly out of the question. What with the nanoprobes disabled, we can't just easily assimilate them. Well, we should just take them apart, I guess, and see what happens. Let's dissect them, Meanwhile, Zero is there, Borgified. How do we get Zero back on our side? It's through the power of friendship, guys. It's through the power of friendship. And this is where I got off the boat with this episode. I'm not willing to win in Star Trek through the power of friendship. Like, friendship is not a strategy, right? I think even little kids would see through this. I think this is it's a little bit demeaning to the quote-unquote target audience. A little. I mean, we got here with the Protostar, a marvel of engineering, and then we won through friendship alone. We just tell Zero, resistance is not futile. Gwyn, I know you almost killed me, but that's okay. You didn't mean it. Oh yeah, I didn't mean it. I'm Zero. Whoops, I'm not Borg anymore. That's basically what happens. An interesting line is uttered though. Resistance is not futile. And it wasn't. Zero resisted and Zero survived. Zero deborgified themselves, and they didn't keep the sweet upgrades they got, they just ripped them off. I don't know why. Zero looked way cooler Borgified, in my opinion. Your mileage may vary, but Borg Zero, I think we could have kept some parts. You know what I'm saying? Where did they put the cortical implant, I wonder? Where'd the implants go? Did they Borgify just the suit? How do you Borgify a Medusan? They're like mist. An interesting question. Not so interesting an answer, because nothing was really brought to light about the nitty-gritty of how that worked. Like I said originally, interesting concept for this episode. How it plays out, not so wonderful. The Borg reveal, in a cool-looking mind space, where we're looking at a physical representation of the mental battle between Zero and the Borg cube. The Borg want to assimilate the living construct in the protostar to use it as a weapon in the future, setting up the stakes for getting away from this Borg cube. I wanted to see, actually, in my opinion, the ship get accidentally assimilated somehow, and then the living weapon begin to assimilate the Borg cube, and then the living weapon destroy the Borg cube. That would have been cool, but that's not what we got. That was my inkling of an idea. As soon as I saw the Borg cube, I was thinking, oh my god, let's make the Borg cube go crazy like we did to that space station. Cool. No. It ended up a lot less interesting than that. Zero is deborgified. Zero rescues our characters. We get back to the protostar. We just leave. Janeway says, hologram Janeway that is, that's enough Borg for 2 lifetimes. You can say that again. And we just get away. What did we learn? Not much. The living construct cannot be removed, according to the Borg, and it cannot be destroyed. That settles that, I guess. That's what we learned. We learned that we can't do anything. Wasn't that worth it, Zero? All that matters is that Zero's okay. You know what? At the end of the day, I don't care how dangerous or frightening it was. Zero, you're okay. That's a little strange, though, when you think about it for 5 seconds, right? I'm sorry I veered off the road intentionally and almost killed you in that car accident. But all that matters is that you're okay now, alright? Yeah, I'd be even more okay if you hadn't have driven off the road. So yeah, it matters that I'm okay now, but I would be more okay had you not. That's what it comes down to. That's how we resolve this episode. Kind of stupid. And it wasn't worth the trouble. What did we learn? We can't do anything. We couldn't do anything before either. Great episode, right? Interesting concept, bad execution, bad finale to the episode. But it gets from A to B to C. Right? There is a plot arc that finishes in this episode, which did not feel so for the previous episode. That's our A plot. But there is a hint of a dreary, forgettable B plot, saved only by its presentation. We meet Dr. Newham on the Dauntless type ship. Is it called the U.S.S. Dauntless? I don't know. It's a Dauntless type. No spoilers for Voyager on how that works out. But suffice to say, Dauntless, as it were, is hot on the tail of the protostar. You know, from crime scene to crime scene. Our Sierra 7-1, whatever it was called, station was destroyed. I know Chakotay didn't do this. Someone has taken control of the protostar. Correct? In a way. Dr. Newham is trying to revive the Diviner, who we saw was picked up by our crew last episode. Admiral Janeway is wondering, how do we get this guy to come back to life? He was at the scene of the crime. We need to find out what he knows. The Diviner. They don't know he's a bad guy. He's a bad dude. as it were. Why don't we put him back in the suit we took off? Wait, that's right, the suit. The suit had like a fluid in it that looked life-sustaining. Maybe he needed that suit to live. Huh. So if we take the fluid out of that suit and administer it to his body, maybe he'll come back to life. It's genius. Who would have thought? The complicated-looking suit that this character wore is actually needed for this character to live. I wish I could kiss tail like that, Ensign. You come up with a brilliant idea like that, eventually I'm going to be taking orders from you, says Dr. Newham. What a genius idea, right? Put him... Let's mimic the environment of his suit. Maybe he'll be okay. Yeah, of course. So, at the very end of the episode, after admittedly enjoyable but short, well-presented scenes of Admiral Janeway walking around in what is a very cool interior of the ship, drinking tea, not coffee, mind you, fitting with the character arc of Janeway and Voyager, Doctor's orders being what they are. I wish you could just stay on that ship. It's so cool. Her crew is so cool. It really looks top class, top-notch stuff here with Admiral Janeway's crew. Very cool. Well presented. Although, I will say, seeing Janeway with the rest of these people, it kind of just brings to light the fact that Janeway is based on a real person. They look real in a way that other characters don't. The other characters look exaggerated, you know? While Janeway looks reserved in the face, like how a real person would look. Maybe they should have designed these other characters based on real people. I think it could have gone a long way to having Janeway fit in with her crew. Admiral Janeway, that is. At the very end of the episode, the Diviner wakes up. There's your B-plot. The Diviner's unconscious. We give him the liquid. The Diviner wakes up. Big whoop. There's your... Like I said before, you could have almost skipped this episode and not really noticed anything. Our characters learn nothing, and the Diviner wakes up. That's the sum total of this episode. But what you do get that you may miss if you skip it is some character development here and there, and some interesting visuals. That's what you're getting in this episode. That's your package deal, right? There you go. That's a whole kit and caboodle, really. To wrap up, musically, nothing really moved me. Visually, it was cool seeing the Borg cube. It was cool being inside it. It looked right. I like being inside the Dauntless type ship. I like seeing Admiral Janeway's crew. Thematically, it's as shallow as it can get. The power of friendship, belonging to a collective stronger than that of the Borg. It's about as boilerplate as you can get for a theme. It's the most inoffensive and simple and easy to conceive of thematic core with which this episode could be powered by. The power of friendship. Universal, timeless as it is also boring. And didn't really pass the sniff test for me. With all those things considered, I'm going to have to go ahead and give this episode a 4.5. I'm probably not going to come back to it. It's kind of a skipper. It just doesn't have anything lasting for me to really chew on. Like I said originally, to its credit, I thought it was worse on first viewing. I watched it again. I realized some of the explanations for what were going on made sense. I realized why certain things worked out the way they did. B-plot really left me wanting. And I really wanted a more tangible and material gift of knowledge from the Borg cube that could have manifestly allowed us to move forward with removing the living construct, if you catch my drift. At the very end, we also have a distress signal from another ship, signaling another adventure for the crew of the Protostar. Let's go help them. We can't go back to Starfleet, but we got the ship, so let's see what's up then. So next episode could be pretty cool. Next episode could be a really good self-contained ship in distress helping episode. Very good. I'm looking forward to get down to some good Starfleeting, if you catch my drift. There's Star Trek Prodigy episode 12. Let Sleeping Borgs Lie. If only we did that, right? There you go. There's a nice review for you. I didn't reference any other Star Trek show except for Voyager, and I did so positively. You see, sometimes it's good to review something for what it is, not for what you want it to be. Sometimes things can exist in a vacuum, even if it belongs to an ancient and storied franchise like Star Trek. I'll see you guys next time. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'll see you next time when I end up seeing you, whatever that means.